Well, we'll get reaction, of course, to what has come out of the water and sanitation Indaba. We're joined by the CEO of the South African Water Chamber, Benoît Leroy. Benoît, a good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for giving us your time. I think I want to start off with some of the sentiments that we heard from the Water and Sanitation Minister today as we saw this Indaba kick off. And one of the things that she's spoken about is, and she uses the words, we have no crisis in terms of water supply in the country. And I'm keen to hear if you agree with that.
Well, you know, it's not black and white. It's murky waters we're treading on. Our water is fully allocated. It's 98 point something according to Department of Water Sanitation and other organizations that have corroborated that number. So our water is fully allocated. So we're on the cusp of not a crisis, of a catastrophe, because we're 10 years late on doing everything, as the president mentioned. So I think that's slightly disingenuous, you know, and we're politicizing water, which we have a big problem with. But having said that, there's two parts. One is the resource, the other one is actually the water service, and it's no use increasing the supply into a system that leaks like a bucket. You know, so you know, we can't do one and not the other. We've got to do both. So, you know, and everybody's been focusing on the water services side, which is correct. But the water resource side, we're 10 years behind on Lesotho Highlands, and that still won't be enough water. So, you know, one must look at the real facts behind all of this. And, you know, politicians have a 5-year life, generally speaking, and we live for 60 to 80 years. So I want water past 5 years. So I think we're sitting on the cusp of a crisis stroke catastrophe on the water resource side, for sure. But we also need to sort out the distribution side of things.
Yeah, and we'll unpack all of that in a little bit. But I also want to just get your responses to what we have heard from the leadership. So the president, for instance, talking about 23 billion rand that's been allocated to 7 large water infrastructure projects. I mean, is there optimism about that money being able to see its value, right? And those projects seeing fruition in a timelier sense?
So again, you know, billions are lots of money, but the master plan in 2018, the Water and Sanitation Master Plan published by the Department of Water and Sanitation stated we needed 900 billion, it's over R1 trillion now. And we're supposed to be halfway through, and we're saying we're spending 23 billion. We're supposed to spend 450 to 500 billion. So that is admission of guilt or failure. You know, so yes, we're trying to say that we're doing something. The reality is we're starting to do, we're talking about it, which is good. But the action is actually not taking place at the pace it should. We should be completing at least this year 500 billion rands worth of work, and we're starting on 23. Lesotho Highlands is about 40 billion, and we're probably more than a third through that. So, you know, government's number earlier on this year was 114 billion rands worth of work was in progress. So the 23, I'm not too sure. That's part of the 114 billion, I think. So we're around about 150. So we're about, let's say, a third of the way where we should be. We need to pull up our socks.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to certainly talk about the money that's needed to bring in new infrastructure, but where we are talking about what's happening with the infrastructure that we already have, one wonders just how necessary it is or how possible it is to really upgrade it to the level that it needs to be at. I mean, there's, of course, the issue around municipalities needing to take responsibility for infrastructure decay and leaks, and there's a question around whether or not the municipalities have the skills and certainly the resources to do so.
Well, I think the minister and her entourage, and including Proctor and Treasury, have been very clear. Municipalities don't have the skills. Apart from one metro, which is Cape Town, and let's say parts of, or 2/3 or 3/4 of the Western Cape. Generally speaking, the exodus of skills from this country, we know where they've gone to. They've gone southwest. So we don't have the skills. It's no use lamenting it, we need to change it. And, you know, it's no use putting all this new water into a system that really leaks. But, you know, the system, there's about 200 billion rand is a number that's being touted about by government that we need over and above the 900 billion just to fix up the non-revenue water, which is leaks, and there are metering issues, there is some theft, and we must stop blaming theft and vandalism as the big things. Those are the small things. It's probably 2, 3, 4, 5%. The billing side is a big part of it, but the leaks, we're leaking over a third of what Rand Water produces for Gauteng, which is double of what eThekwini or Cape Town use in a day. So, we can't afford to do that. And that water we need, because by 2030 we'll have a deficit that's increased because of that. So we need to capacitate the municipalities, and there's only one way of doing it. And their Department of Water Sanitation has been very adventurous in busy setting up independent water regulator and a licensing regime so that the water service providers will be licensed, and most of them will fail that test, which means alternatives have to be brought in, and that's where the private sector will partner. And this is being watched globally. There's a huge opportunity to get it right, but the sector is unbankable. And this is where a lot of work's being done to make sure that the money that goes in from the private sector that's invested in actually goes to the right places. So SPVs, special purpose vehicles are spoken about, etc. But these things are quite complex, and you have to entice people's savings through the banks to do that, and bondholders. And believe me, the current architecture doesn't engender any security. So that's being worked on to make it investable or bankable. So we're going to sort out the municipal side of things. It's not going to be a silver bullet. It's going to take us 5 to 10 years. And when the new water starts coming in, at least the system won't be leaking. But we've got to start, It's good that we're talking. It's good that we're in the media, etc. But we have to start these things. The Western Cape has started and has announced 40 billion rands worth of, on its own, of water and sanitation infrastructure. Of its 100 billion, and it's busy with it, so we need to do the same in the rest of the country. And unfortunately, apart from a few of the big water boards who are doing their own work, Rand Water is doing very good work in augmenting their treatment plants so they can take the new water from the Lesotho Highlands Phase 2, but the rest need to also do that, and don't have to mention Hammanskraal, Tshwane, Joburg outages. I've got family having had water the whole week.
Now, you talk about outages, and I immediately think about how it's more than just the outages, it's also a big issue around the quality of water. Just as this Indaba was taking place today, at the same time in Indaba, local municipality, the community there, outraged and taking to the streets, taking issue with what they say is just unsanitary and water that is just unsafe for them to drink. I mean, what is it that can be done in the short term, though, that really can come out of this Indaba to deal with the quality of water that reaches some of the most vulnerable of our communities?
Yeah. So you raise a very, very good point. So we use about 5 billion litres of water for our cities a day, and about 4.5 billion of sewage is generated. And that sewage, 97% of it doesn't comply to the Green Drop report. So we're actually polluting our water reserve, which means, in actual fact, we have far less volume available because it's impacted by the poor quality, and the poor quality is reflected in some of our eutrophication. So where we get water hyacinth and lettuce, etc., growing, they only grow if there's nutrients in there, and the nutrients are coming from sewage. So what we in actual fact doing is we pollute. Our system is very closed, it's very circular, so we're polluting our water resources, and that we have to stop. Now, it's a local government issue, so it's municipalities have to sort out the sewage wells. It's not a replacement issue, it's a matter of operating and maintaining the plants according to their designs, and in time starting to improve on them and to start reusing that water as we increase the technology that goes in, because now we can reuse a lot of the water for potable, for industrial, etc. We've been doing it in certain places, but we have to do it on a much wider scale. And then people will be secured with having a good blue drop report, where at the moment, third of the systems are critical. And so outside of the metros, people don't trust the water. It's, and there's boil notices all over the place. And the rural areas are completely forgotten out of this. And it's quite a difficult dilemma to address, because the economy and the GDP and the focus is in the metros and the big towns, etc. And the rural folk are left out. We need a lot of money. I don't know where it's going to come from, because the fiscus doesn't have it. We need a lot of money to sort out the rural systems, because those systems are, generally speaking, unrecoverable, because a lot of indigent people, and they're big distances, so the population density is low. So the cost of that infrastructure is very high. It's not bankable. It has to be supported by the fiscus. So we're going to need some donor funds of sorts to be able to address those, because our fiscus can't do it.
Yeah, as the president took to the podium this morning. One of the things that he did right at the beginning, in fact, of his address was talk about how this Indaba, like many others, should not be, you know, what some will call a talk shop, and going as far as saying let it not be 2 days of identifying problems, but really come out of it with what he's called a national plan or national water plan. It's interesting that we, you know, 2025 are still asking about what our national water plan needs to be. But are you optimistic about these sort of engagements that, you know, where you've got industry stakeholders coming together, that the next time an Indaba takes place, that there's some traction that can be measured?
Well, I've got mixed feelings. I'm saying this is really good, but, you know, a couple of years ago we had the first water summit stroke in Indaba, and we said exactly the same things. Eutrophication was just over 60%. Now it's over 75%. So we have regressed. Non-revenue water has gone up. So we have regressed. But we are, as government, government is talking to the private sector a lot more than it used to. It acknowledges the problems. We're not sweeping them under the carpet. So from that perspective, it is encouraging. But as you're saying, it's mostly talk shops. Apart from the Western Cape, where we're seeing workshops, implementation, and projects actually progressing in the ground, we have to convert these talk shops. So I'm not too sure how we do that as a society, but we need to push this hard, very hard.
Yeah. And of course, as we wrap up Human Rights Month, important to remember water is a basic human right, as is sanitation. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Benoît Leroy, CEO there of the SA Water Chamber.